Welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans, for Ohio State fans. From the West Coast, I'm your host, Zach Moore. Happy New Year, everyone. Today is Sunday, January 5th, 2025, and I'm very happy to be joined once again by fellow South Stands contributor, Paige Van Horn from Denver. PVH, how's it going, buddy?
Well, bro. Just going well. It's a little chilly here in Denver.
Oh, yeah?
Still, everyone's basking in that Buckeye Rose Bowl glow, so it can't be too cold. So happy to be chatting with you on a Sunday afternoon, which is, I think I guess we did Sundays before.
Yeah, but it's been a minute. Yeah, for sure.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. We are also joined by our wayward friend, Chad Plummer from Cleveland. CP, so nice of you to join us today. What's the word from the 216?
Thanks for making time, Chad.
Hey, all right, boys. What's up? Awesome to be back on here, man. It's like for a few weeks. I apologize. It's just been crazy with the holidays and everything. But you know what? I'm on today, and we're playing Texas on Friday.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, Woo! Baby. Good to hear your voice, my friend.
You guys as well.
Let's get her started here, guys. We have three main objectives I want to knock out with you guys today. First, we will revel in Ohio State's resounding 41-21 win over one-seed Oregon in the CFP quarterfinal game at the Rose Bowl. Now, I did a recap of that game on Thursday afternoon, but our listeners haven't heard your takes on that game yet, fellas, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you momentarily. Second, we'll look ahead to Ohio State's semifinal matchup with 5-seed Texas in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic this coming Friday. I'm going to be there, and I'm very excited about it. Finally, we'll have a peek at the other semifinal matchup between 6-seed Penn State and number 7-seed Notre Dame in the Capital One Orange Bowl this coming Thursday. But first, gents, let's have a look back at the Buckeyes' dominant performance over Oregon in the Rose Bowl this past Wednesday. Ohio State jumped out to a commanding 34-0 lead. Now, Oregon did manage to show a little life. They came back on a 15-0 run during the middle eight, as they call it, to cut the lead to 34-15, but the Buckeyes would snuff out the Ducks' comeback bid with an 8-yard touchdown run by Trey Henderson late in the third quarter. They took a commanding 41-15 lead going into the fourth quarter. Freshman phenom Jeremiah Smith was named the game's offensive MVP, and senior linebacker Cody Simon was named the defensive MVP. PVH, I want to start with you because you thought Ohio State would win this game convincingly. What stood out to you from this performance by the Buckeyes?
Did I really think convincingly? I mean, I thought they would win. I thought they were better. And I guess there's degrees of convincingly. Like,
maybe you said decidedly or something, but
so yeah, I think I had it like 34-20, or I don't know. I mean, I definitely thought that they would win. I definitely felt like they were the better team. But not like that, right? I mean, come on, who saw that coming? But yeah, man, I mean, I just think for whatever reason, right, there's a lot of cliches and hyperbole out there. This is the team we've been expecting the entire season. And they have shown up in the biggest way in the playoffs, which is actually kind of what you want to happen. And, you know, they're just firing on all cylinders. I think, you know, more at the micro level, right? I think it's amazing, but you don't necessarily have to run the ball, right? There's other ways to establish the run. And I think they've clearly just said, F it. We've got the best player in college football. We are going to just ride him until one or two things happen. And actually, they both happen, right? You can either stop it or it just opens up so much other things for that offense that you're pretty much just, you're done at that point. I don't know how you slow them down. And obviously I'm talking about Smith. But yeah, I mean, it was just an awesome performance across the board. I think the defense is getting overshadowed just by how awful or awesome the offense is. I mean, those guys, I mean, I'm sure you went back and watched every play. It feels to me that Knowles has found something probably with Caleb Downs, just patrolling the back end, that has allowed them to play just completely free, more loose. The guy is just the ultimate sweeper back there.
Yep. He's playing kind of this hybrid linebacker safety spot. So he's not, and I think they're using Jordan Hancock more at the deep safety. So Downs can play a little closer to the line of scrimmage, and he's having a huge impact there, both against the run and in the passing game. Sorry, go ahead, PBH.
Yeah. So so that's we could spend the whole rest of this Sunday talking about how awesome that game was. But the defense is playing as well as the offense. And if that's happening, good effing luck to everybody out there, of the remaining 3 teams. It's awesome to see. So much fun. I mean, that thing was it was pure just joy to watch them destroy that team at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Now, CP, I think your score prediction was more like something like 28-23. You and I were a little closer, I think, in our predictions. We thought this would be a closer game. What did you see in that game that stood out to you, my friend?
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I'm like it's so ecstatic. Like just the whole there's nothing better than, because we're usually on the other end of games starting out sluggish and slow, and we're down 10, or just chasing the dream, freaking out, but it just I just what I see is a focused unit, man.
Yeah.
That team, I think the Michigan, I wasn't on the Michigan pod with you guys, and but I think that may have been just something like, hey guys, this is real shit, man. Dude, this is it. So you better wake the fuck up. Let's get going. And I feel like that the offensive line played well.
Yeah.
The defensive unit knows got down to jump on, Paige's comment there. I mean, Downs just, man, he knows where the ball's going. There was a couple diving, a couple of those INTs he should have maybe had.
I know, there were 2. You're right.
Yeah. Regardless, I mean, he's a baller. Tyreek Williams stepped up. I mean, you could give that that defensive game ball like Tyreek. I mean, obviously Cody Simon. Everybody played their role the way they're supposed to. And you look at that defense, man. We brought in the portal. We only brought Caleb and but Iggy. He's been there for a couple years. So really, that defense right there are all 4th and 5th year seniors, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyways, they showed up, man. I feel like that team is focused. I don't think they're they're not letting anything get to their heads. They know what they got to do. They know they got 2 more games in this season, and I don't even think they're looking ahead to. They're looking ahead to Friday and nothing beyond that, and that's what I'm excited about. Everybody, I feel like it's on the same page as a unit. It's really fun to watch, man.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. 13 tackles for loss, 8 sacks by the Ohio State defense. They hold the Oregon offense to 276 total yards. They held the Oregon rushing attack to minus 23. It doesn't get more dominant than that as a defense. It's incredible. PBH, let me kick this back to you. What else did you see from the Rose Bowl that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Chad mentioned the defensive line. I think all those guys, because they're sort of unsung. Sometimes you're not necessarily watching those guys specifically. But they're wreaking havoc, right? You just mentioned minus 23 yards.
It's insane.
It's insane. And so again, I think the defense is huge. The other thing that I kind of like that, and I think they left that night. So they got they won that game. They showered up. They did the press conference, and they got on a plane. They got the F out of there,
yeah,
right?
I like that.
Which just kind of speaks to me, okay, yeah, this is all business right?
Trip.
It's just another, it's a business. It's another, stepping stone. They didn't spend the entire week out there, right? And so I think it just speaks to Chad's point about the focus, and that's to me, if there's one thing that I'm and probably getting ahead here is they got to keep that up. But it certainly feels like they're dialed in, and that won't be a problem, but it does kind of worry me. But this is uncharted territories, right? We've never seen this before. You got to win 4 to win it all, or 3 if you got the first round bye. So so far, so good. Taking care of business, man.
Yeah, why it took 3 months for this team to play like it has during these playoffs might be debated for years to come. They're probably going to write a book about it. And maybe it was the crushing weight of those natty or bust expectations. There was the ongoing battle of wills between Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson that had to be resolved before the defense could reach its ceiling. And I think the marriage of Chip Kelly's run game and Ryan Day's passing game took most of the season to really click. And of course, the offensive line injuries certainly didn't help matters. And maybe all of that explains the two low points that the Buckeyes hit this season, which were the Oregon loss followed by that Nebraska clunker, and then, of course, the Michigan loss. Now, what happened against Oregon forced the necessary changes on defense to improve the pass rush. I think we can all agree on that. And then the Michigan loss seemed to force the necessary change on offense, which, Paige, you referenced this earlier, which is just, look, lean into what you do best, right? Get the ball to those Ferraris on the outside, Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buka. Let them make plays. This is an offense that needs to throw to set up the run, and I think it took Ryan Day and Chip Kelly until the postseason really, truly embraced that. But still, I did not anticipate this team with all of its talent and experience needing to take not one, but 2 L's to get to this point. But I mean, what the hell do I know? At this point, it doesn't matter how we got here. The point is, we're here now. The Buckeyes are peaking at the right time, and they now seem to be comfortable managing the weight of those expectations, which I think is also big. Now, as you guys both know, I was cautiously optimistic about the Buckeyes heading into the Rose Bowl, but I'm happy to report, I have moved out of my little 2-bedroom apartment on Cautious Optimism Lane into a penthouse on Bullish Boulevard, fellas. I am bullish on this team. I love our chances the rest of the way. CP, let me kick this back to you. What else from the Rose Bowl do you want to discuss here?
It's something that you guys had mentioned earlier, and if you're a defense like Oregon, we'll flat out tell you, we're going to throw it to Jeremiah. You do what you need to do. But that's the little thing. We've got the two or three best receivers in the country right there with them. So, hey, triple team them, man. Got Carnell Tate open, we got Mbuka open. You know what I mean? Just name a couple. And it's just. It's really, like you said, see Ferrari's out and say it's crazy, man. Then that opens up. Travion's been running. I'm still. What impresses me a lot? We knew the defense. We knew the defense had the potential. Okay. We have been hit with a lot of diversity as far as our O-line. But I'll tell you what, you talk about a unit that has come together and kind of the task at hand and what they, it basically goes through them. A lot of this for us to even be in this position. And I love what they've done. And I just hope that, we can continue to do that. Texas has got a pretty, big D line. So, I'm looking forward to seeing that and them guys continuing to ride that wave throughout, the end of January. So
it has been a pretty impressive smoke and mirror job by Justin Fry, fielding a competent offensive line with a lot of guys that are inexperienced that were reserves when the season started. It very, very impressive. PVH, anything else you want to say about the Rose Bowl before we look ahead to the Cotton Bowl?
No, I think we should focus our sights on the future in Texas, and because we're only halfway there, right?
That's right. Still 2 more games. So let's do that. Let's turn our attention to the CFP semifinal game between 8-seed Ohio State and 5-seed Texas this coming Friday at the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic in Dallas. This game is a 7:30 p.m. Eastern kick on ESPN. The line is Ohio State -6. The over-under is 53.5. Guys, this will be the first of 2 games these teams will play this year. The Buckeyes and Longhorns will meet again on August 30th in Columbus in what will be the 2025 season opener for both schools.
What an opener.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
On my birthday, no less.
Maybe we'll have to orchestrate a trip out to old Columbus for your birthday to see that game.
That would be pretty good,
PBH. Now, these schools have met only 3 times on the gridiron previously, twice during the regular season and a home-and-home back in 2005 and 2006, and then once in the postseason, which was the 2009 Fiesta Bowl. Now, Texas, led by quarterback Vince Young, won the first matchup 25-22 in the Horseshoe back in 2005 on their way to an undefeated season and a national championship. Then we remember Troy Smith, Teddy Ginn, and James Laurinaitis returned the favor the following season in Austin, beating the Longhorns 24-7 on their way to an undefeated regular season and an appearance in the national title title game. And then the rubber match was the 2009 Fiesta Bowl. Colt McCoy and the Longhorns eked out a 24-21 win over freshman Terrell Pryor and the Buckeyes that night. Now the Longhorns come into this matchup at 12-2. They beat 12-seeded Clemson 38-24 in the first round in Austin. And on New Year's Day in the quarterfinals, they eked out a 39-31 double overtime win over 4-seed Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. That was a game in which Texas blew a 16-point lead in the fourth quarter. And then both of the Longhorns' losses this season were at the hands of the Georgia Bulldogs, once during the regular season and once in the SEC title game. So guys, why don't we do this? Let's do our usual, we'll have a look at one side of the ball and then we'll flip it around and look at the other side of the ball. Let's start by having a look at the Texas defense against the Ohio State offense. I have just a few stats I want to get through and then I'm going to kick it to you guys for your takes on this matchup. The Longhorns come into this game ranked third nationally in total defense. They're tied for second in defensive yards per play. They're fourth nationally in scoring defense. They're allowing 14.5 points per game. They're third nationally against the pass. Not quite as stout against the run, though still very good. The Longhorns are 13th nationally against the run. Now, one area where Texas really excels is forcing turnovers. The Longhorns are second nationally in takeaways with 30. And they're also very good at making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Texas is fourth nationally in sacks with 44 and sixth in tackles for loss with 108. So this is a big playmaking defense that Ohio State's about to face. Now, this Texas defense is a decorated unit featuring 3 AP All-Americans. Cornerback Jahdae Barron, who was voted to the first team. Barron is also the 2024 Thorpe Award winner. Defensive tackle Alfred Collins and safety Michael Taff were voted second team AP All-Americans. The Longhorn defense also boasts the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year and defensive end Colin Simmons. One other player to watch on this Longhorn defense, guys, is safety Andrew Makuba. Jahdae Barron and Makuba own the 2 highest overall PFF grades for this Texas defense. Barron is grading out at 91. Makuba is at 90.9. But as good as this Texas defense has been this year, guys, it is worth noting. Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik got them for 336 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in Austin. And Arizona State put up 510 yards of total offense on them in the Peach Bowl. CP, I'm going to kick this over to you. Get us started. What are you going to be watching when the Buckeyes have the ball against this Texas defense?
Okay, when we have the ball, I mean, obviously, you just mentioned right there, and I, alluded to it, I think, a few minutes ago, is our offensive line.
Yeah.
Okay, they've got that, which was kind of controversial, like in that kid, the freshman of the year, Colin Simmons, their, defensive end over Jeremiah Smith. I mean, that kid's a baller, and you got that first team, SEC linebacker. There's the defensive tackle Alfred Collins. Mm-hmm. They've got some big boys on that defensive line. So I think that the trenches is where it's going to be won. As far as I feel like we do have to establish the run game. At some throw the ball 5 times, run. You know what I mean? Just got to be able to run it. I'm not saying we have to have some major. They have to have 350 yards rushing or anything like that. But I'm saying we need to be able to implement that. So we've got to be able to control the line of scrimmage throughout this game with some of those big Texas boys.
I like that point, CP. I mean, I think you're right. It doesn't have to be like 300 yards, but 170, 180 yards rushing, that's about the sweet spot, I think, for this offense. Yep. All right, PVH, let me kick this over to you. What are you going to be watching when the Buckeyes have the ball against this Texas defense?
So it sounds like they're safeties and they have some good guys in the secondary. They better fucking hope they're Lester Hayes and Ed Reed because the Jeremiah Smith train is coming. And I don't care. Right? I mean, that's the key. And, I was also thinking, just the maturity of that kid. Just imagine, so this is game, 15 for him? What a different player he probably is. Yeah. Because they've been sort of alluding to that, right? Like he's fine, not that it's clicked, but, he's got an entire college football season under his belt now, and he's just a mismatch, right? And so exploit it. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I was watching a little bit of the frickin' Clowns yesterday and playing the Ravens and Derrick Henry, and I was reminded, I was thinking to myself, it was astonishing that Alabama didn't just ride that guy to a national championship, especially, the year that we took them out in 2014. And, that's how I feel that they need to, be looking at Smith. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, did they pass like the first 9 times, right? Like if you just get Smith going, right, and it clicks, then everything else is going to open up, and then you don't necessarily need to key on him, for the rest of the game. And that would, to me, be the game plan again. It also feels like this is the 5th time we're going up, against top 5 defense.
Yep.
Right. So, probably pretty battle tested, but it is going to be another test for them. So they're going to have to win the line of scrimmage, sure, but just keep doing what you've done for the last 2 games. And you guys like the balance. I don't care. I'll take the score. If we pass for 500 and rush for 0, I'm totally fine with that, as long as we still put up 45. Yeah. I know, but just keep doing what you're doing. And I think they've completely switched, and decided, hey, we're going to ride this kid all the way. And I would continue to do that, because I don't see how anybody's going to stop it.
We have a clear strength-on-strength matchup on this side of the ball, I think, with the Ohio State receivers against the Texas secondary. I think this is the best secondary the Buckeyes are going to see this season. Jahdae Barron, Michael Taff, and Andrew Makuba have a combined 12 interceptions this season, and all 3 have coverage grades of over 89 according to PFF. Now, they haven't seen a monster like Jeremiah Smith or probably even Emeka Egbuka yet. Still, I think Jeremiah Smith versus Jahdae Barron should be an awesome matchup. That should be a lot of fun. My X factor in this matchup, though, guys, is Carnell Tate. He's a very quiet postseason so far. Only 1 catch on 3 targets against Oregon. Only 1 catch on 1 target against Tennessee. Keep your eye on Tate in this game. I think he's due. And the Buckeyes might need him. Right? The Buckeyes might need him if this Texas secondary does turn out to be as good as, the accolades and the stats would suggest. And I feel like I can just copy and paste my take about Ohio State's patchwork offensive line, and CP, you've already gone there. But I feel like I can, copy and paste, that take from the last 2 games and just use it here again. But Paige, as you alluded to it, I'm not sure the Texas defensive line is going to show Ohio State anything they haven't already seen in Penn State, Michigan, Indiana, Tennessee, Oregon. I mean, and that's no disrespect to Texas. I'm sure that defensive line is very good, but the Buckeye offensive line is very well battle tested by now, as you pointed out, PBH, and they just need to continue to execute. The one real area of concern, though, that I do have on this side of the ball against a Texas defense that ranks 2nd nationally in takeaways is Will Howard's penchant for turning the ball over. Now, he was excellent against Oregon. He took great care of the football in that game. I think he's going to need to do that again in this matchup for the Buckeyes to win. Finally, there's one area where the Texas defense might be gettable, guys, and that's in the explosive play department. The Longhorns are tied for 28th nationally in allowing scrimmage plays of 40-plus yards. They've allowed 9 this season. That's 3 times as many as the Ohio State defense, and 6 of those were through the air. The Buckeye offense had 4 scrimmage plays of 40-plus yards in the Rose Bowl, so that's something to keep an eye on. CP, let me kick this back to you. What are the thoughts you have on this matchup?
I mean, I'm just excited. And that linebacker who I was alluding to, who's leads them with tackles, he's got like 107, was Anthony Hill Jr.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I apologize. He's solid.
He's a good player.
But yeah, you know what? I think that I like your point about Carnell Tate. That could be like Chip's ace in the hole, man. Like, just that silent, like the last couple games. The kid's got the talent. I mean, we've seen him make some amazing catches and play a hell of a game in multiple games this year. So, that is a good point. That's something to look out for there. I'm just excited. Will number 18's been throwing some darts, baby.
Yeah, he has.
I hope the offensive line gives him the time. Right there, the time to throw the ball, and really at the end of the day, I think we've hit on all the major points for us to have a successful offensive, game plan against this Texas defense.
Okay, before we flip it around, PVH, is there anything we missed looking at this matchup?
No, I was just going to say, but you mentioned it, right? It is kind of funny. Like Will Howard, he's not an X factor, right? Like he is the factor, right? So the fact that we're not, and I think we all had concern, right? Like, can the coaching staff turn it around? But can we get 4 great games out of Will Howard? So keep it up, right? And turnovers will be key. It sounds like they have a propensity to get him from Texas aside, but he's got to be playing with a lot of confidence at this point, right? And just,
absolutely,
just take what is there. And they're calling great plays. So yeah, I think
you guys see,
will definitely be a factor.
And I think he's a good dude too, man. Because did you see? I could see some people getting pissed off. I probably would get a little salty when he was at the side there, and that one dude, the Rose Bowl dude, wouldn't let him up on stage on the one side.
I saw that during the trophy presentation. That was weird. Yeah,
yeah, it was. He was he turned around and goes hey, what the fuck, man? But he was smiling about it. He just went over to the other side and got up there. But that guy was oh no. He's hey, I'm the quarterback, dude. That guy was oh, yo. Okay, dude.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny.
That was funny. He was a good sport about that. He does look like a completely new quarterback when it comes to the vertical passing game. Guys, remember the second half of the regular season, he was not throwing downfield. He was not the vertical passing game was non-existent. But against Tennessee and in Oregon, these first two playoff games, I mean, what does he have? He had the two deep shots to Jeremiah Smith against Tennessee. He had the other deep shot down the seam to Emeka Egbuka to set up another touchdown. He threw another pass exactly like it in the Rose Bowl to Egbuka that went for a touchdown. And then the two deep balls to Jeremiah Smith. He had a couple others. I mean, he is a transformed quarterback when it comes to the vertical passing game. And that has unlocked, all the potential of this offense. All right, guys. Let's have a look at the Texas offense against the Buckeye defense. Now, the Longhorns come into this game 17th nationally in total offense. They're 28th in offensive yards per play. They're 21st nationally in scoring offense, averaging 34 points per game. They're 14th in passing offense. They're not a great rushing offense. The Longhorns are 63rd nationally, averaging just over 165 yards per game. And they're only averaging 4.46 yards per carry in the run game, which is 60th nationally. Their statistical profile on offense isn't that far off from Oregon's, but I think the Longhorns rely on explosive plays more than the Ducks do. They're tied for 6th nationally in scrimmage plays of 40-plus yards with 21, and 15 of those have come through the air. Now, as we look at the Longhorns personnel on this side of the ball, of course, we have to start with quarterback Quinn Ewers, the Ohio State transfer. Ewers, as we know, spent a season in Columbus back in 2021 before transferring to Texas. And Ewers has been solid this season, but I'm not sure he took the leap from last season that the Texas fans were hoping for. Now, he has dealt with some injuries. He's got an oblique injury that he's been dealing with all season, reportedly, and a high ankle sprain. Now, I heard Ryan Russillo say that he heard it's a tear, that he has a torn oblique muscle, and he's been managing that all season. But he does come into this game with 3,189 yards passing, 29 touchdown passes, and 11 picks. He's completing 66.5% of his passes at 7.9 yards per attempt. Now, the Texas offensive line, very good. They were a Joe Moore Award finalist this season. So was Oregon's, by the way. That unit is led by left tackle Kelvin Banks Jr., who was named a first-team AP All-American. But the Longhorns have been pretty beat up along the offensive line, guys. They may be without their starting right tackle, Cameron Williams, for this game. Williams is dealing with a right knee sprain, I believe it is. He did not play in the Peach Bowl against Arizona State. So that is a situation to watch, as they're going to be facing a Buckeye pass rush that has 12 sacks in its last two games. Now, I think the Texas skill players are good, but probably a notch below Oregon's. Running backs Quintravion Wisner and Jaden Blue lead the Longhorn rushing attack. Wisner leads the Longhorns in carries with 209 and rushing yards with just over 1,000. But Blue is the more explosive back. He has the better per carry average of 5.5 yards, and he has more rushing touchdowns with 8. The Longhorns' top receiving threat is junior Matthew Golden, the Houston transfer. Golden has 56 catches for 936 yards and 9 touchdowns. Golden had a huge game against Arizona State, 7 receptions for 149 yards, and he saved the Longhorns bacon in that game, guys. He was the one that caught the touchdown pass on 4th and 13 in overtime. I mean, it was like 4th and your season for the Longhorns. He catches a 28-yard touchdown pass from Ewers to keep Texas alive in that game. Now, the Buckeye defense has faced a lot of good tight ends this season. They're going to see another one on Friday in Gunnar Helm. Helm leads the Longhorns in receptions with 58. And he's second on the team in receiving yards with 744 and touchdown catches with 7. Helm was voted second team all SEC this season. PVH, I'm going to start with you. What are you going to be watching when the Buckeyes are on defense against this Longhorn offense?
At what point does Sark go to Arch? Because I'm not seeing it with the mullet. I watched a fair amount of both their games. I mean, dude, Arizona State, especially, I mean, they had at least 2 or 3 trips to the red zone where they didn't convert at all. And, Texas, and again, against Clemson, too, they kind of jumped out, but then they let Clemson back in that game. Then they let Arizona back in this game.
Yeah.
And by all rights, should have lost that, I mean. But, kudos to them. They got it done. There's just something wrong, it feels like. And so maybe it is an injury. It doesn't, these words might come back to haunt me, but I just don't feel like he's taken the steps, and he scares me nearly as much as sort of like Dylan Gabriel does. So, I'm not. There's just something not clicking with them on both sides of the ball. I know they're good. But then I also kind of think, okay, you lost twice to Georgia. You just got their ass kicked by Notre Dame if we're going to play the association game.
Right.
What worries me more is just Ohio State playing their game, not necessarily Tennessee being able to dictate much on actually either side of the ball.
Okay. CP, what are you going to be watching when the Buckeyes are on defense against the Longhorn offense?
Giving up the big play. I mean, I feel like Denzel has kind of gotten himself dialed back in.
Yeah.
Nor do I want to jinx that whatsoever by making that statement.
I'm going to knock on wood as you say that.
Yeah, dude, I'm about to right now. Yep. So, I feel like their offensive line, the way our defensive line, we're getting pressure in there, and I love the schemes that Knowles has finally, I think you said it earlier, Z, like him and Johnson got finally seen their differences, and we're rushing and blitzing more, and dropping back when we need to. But I feel like pressure on Ewers. He seems to tend to want to get the ball out of his hands quick. He's I don't know the exact number, but I know he's had, I think Paige may have mentioned it, he's had multiple interceptions in the last, the kid still throws some darts too, and he made some good, played really good, second half in that overtime, last week's game.
Yep, he was good.
I think putting as much pressure so we can keep on them, on Ewers and their offensive line, that's going to be the key. Again, going back to the offense, I think it's the trenches, man. I think that's where it's going to be. I'm not worried about this defense whatsoever as far as sustaining that, intensity throughout this entire game. I just think we need to put a lot of pressure on that, on the quarterback, and, get our DBX like Burke and the rest of the party just focused and not getting burnt on that big play.
When we break down a game of these stakes, I often like to look at how the opponent fared against like competition. You mentioned it, Paige. Closest thing to Ohio State that Texas faced this season was Georgia, twice. They lost both games. In those 2 losses to the Bulldogs this season, the Texas offense allowed 13 sacks. They committed 7 turnovers. 5 of them were by Quinn Ewers. And the Longhorn rushing attack was held to 1.1 yard per carry in those 2 games. And Texas did not eclipse 20 points in either game. They were held to 15 points by Georgia in the regular season loss in Austin, and to 19 points in the SEC title game. Texas also committed a total of 19 penalties in those games. The Longhorns, by the way, are tied for 71st nationally in penalty yardage this season. The stat that really stands out to me here, guys, though, is that Quinn Ewers has been sacked 27 times this season. 27. And he's been sacked 11 times just in their 3 postseason games alone. Georgia got him 6 times in the SEC title game. Arizona got him 3 times in the Peach Bowl. For context, Will Howard has only been sacked 10 times this season. He's been sacked less in, 14 games than Whit Ewers has been sacked in their 3 postseason games. And this is a Texas offense that has struggled to take care of the football all season long, guys. The Longhorns come into this game 126 nationally in turnovers. They have 24 turnovers this season. I very much like this matchup for the Ohio State defense. There seems to be a lot that they can take advantage of here. PVH, let me kick this to you. Any other thoughts on this side of the ball?
It is fascinating, right? I mean, I guess it's not when he transferred. It's like, yeah, it's in the cards that we could see them again. But it is interesting to have Ewers on the other side of the ball, in the semifinals. And then I was thinking, okay, if he'd have left, or when he left, would we switch quarterbacks? I mean, dude, today I'm taking Howard every day that we twice on Sunday, if I had the option of having Ewers. So, he's going to make some plays, but I think you're right. I think the defense is going to have a lot of opportunities, especially if they can get pressure, right? If he is banged up, right, and then it's just it'll make him uncomfortable. And if he's dealing with an injury, then this is going to be really hard for him to perform at the level they're going to need him to perform at in order to win this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. CP, any other thoughts on the Texas offense against the Ohio State defense?
What do you guys what point in this ball game do you think it will take for Sark to make a decision to put Manning in? When do you think that when does that happen throughout this game?
That's a really good question.
It could happen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if this plays out for Ohio State like the first two playoff games, and they jump out to a commanding first quarter lead, Sark might have to do it, before the second quarter, right? I mean, I don't know you can afford, if you're Texas, you can't afford to fall behind 21-0 and not have anything going on offense. So could be. Right. We'll see.
And he did it. I think he did it in the SEC championship game, and Manning. I mean, it's just it's an untenable position for Manning. It's like you're not going to come in and save the game, right? I mean, not having ever played this, college football yet, right? I mean, he just hasn't, right? And it didn't work in the SEC championship game, and I think he brought him in for a series or two, and he had to go back to Ewers. I mean, you might take a shot and just see, but if that's your game plan, good luck, right? I don't think it's going to work out for you. And if we come out, like we have in the last couple games, and you get up on them early, I could see him definitely taking a shot and seeing if something can happen. But I seriously doubt it'll work.
I mean, if it's competitive and Texas is hanging in there, or, God forbid, they jump out to the lead and they're in control of the game early, we're not going to see Arch Manning. I mean, he's only played, I'm looking at his snap log right now on PFF. He's only played 9 snaps since the Florida game. He got 3 against Texas A&M. He got 4 against Clemson in that first round playoff game. He got 2 in the SEC title game against Georgia, and he did not play last week against Arizona State. I think if the Texas coaching staff has their druthers that, they're going to save Manning for next year. He's their quarterback of the future. But I don't know. If the Ohio State defense plays as it did the last couple of weeks, and the offense along with it, their hand may be forced. All right, fellas, why don't we fire up the concernometer? CP, why don't you get us started? Give us your concernometer readout for this game.
I'm going to go with a 7.25.
7.25. I love it.
Yep. I usually, the way I really feel, like, honestly, in my gut, is a little bit a little bit less than that, but I'm just gonna throw that out there. 7 and 7.25, 7.25.
Okay, I like it. That's reasonable. PVH.
So I had 2 concernometers, right? So it's just the 10 because of the time of the year and the stakes of these games. Mm-hmm. I was a 6.5 for Oregon. I am a little bit concerned about complacency, and I just think. We've seen them do it in the past, and as much as I feel like they've turned the corner with that kind of shit, I want to see it again. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is the game, right? If they get past this game, they're winning it all for sure. But this is the game where I think you could potentially stumble, right? And so for that, I'm going to add 2 points to my concernometer. I'm at an 8.5.
8.5. That's reasonable. Look, the talent on that Longhorn roster is real, guys. Now, according to the 24/7 Sports Team Talent Composite, Ohio State is number 3, but Texas is right behind them at number 4. And both programs have double-digit 5-star prospects on their rosters. Only 2 other programs can make that claim, and that's Alabama and Georgia. The Texas defense is real. And I think their secondary is legit. They're the best secondary Ohio State's going to see this season. And while many of his numbers are down from a year ago, Quinn Ewers is still an excellent quarterback with an NFL future. I personally think he's the best quarterback Ohio State is going to see. I think he's better than Gabriel. I know Gabriel's had the better season, the better statistical season, but I think Ewers has NFL arm talent. And Steve Sarkisian, look, he's an excellent coach who can scheme it up. And, finally, Texas gets to play the role of the plucky underdog that nobody's given a chance to win in this game. And they'll be playing in front of a decisively pro-Texas crowd in Dallas. So my concernometer is also pretty high, though. Not quite as high as yours, PVH. I'm at an 8 on the concernometer. All right, fellas.
It's a home game for them.
Pretty much. It'll be interesting to see what the turnout is from Ohio State fans. But I would think Ohio State fans who traveled, between the two bowls, the Cotton Bowl and the Rose Bowl, probably most of them went to the Rose Bowl. And I can tell you, after having booked everything, including buying my damn ticket, it ain't cheap to go to these games. All right, fellas, let's get to some score predictions. Again, the line is Ohio State -6. The over-under is 53.5. Now, this game's going to be played indoors, so weather's not going to be a factor. CP, get us started.
Buckeyes 37, upside down hook 'em horns 24.
37-24 Buckeyes. I love it. PVH?
I'm going to go 33-16 Buckeyes.
Ooh, all right.
I think, I think their defense is a little bit better than any of the defenses they've seen, at least so far in the playoffs. So they might not be able to put up a 40-bagger like they have been. But yeah, I just think our defense is going to be able to make as many stops as we need. And actually, that's one thing we didn't talk about. We talked about how many stops would the Ohio State defense need to get against Oregon. And I think we talked about 3 or 4. Would they get like 7 or 8?
Yeah.
I think they'll be able to do that again against Texas and kind of shut them down. So I kind of like this our defense to bring this one home for us. So I got us 33-16.
33-16. I like that. Paige, you alluded to this just a couple of minutes ago. I think the challenge for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, which I think applies both to this postseason run and the future, is finding a way to play their best now that the whole world has recognized their greatness. And everyone's back on the bandwagon. Look, if you're not on the bandwagon now, you're just a hater and you're probably a Michigan fan, and that's fine. Having the world and your own fan base doubt you can't be the only way to access your A game, right? That's no way to go through life. And at a place like Ohio State, you shouldn't have to live like that. I mean, you shouldn't have to lose in your home field to a 6-5 Michigan team, turn a large portion of your own fan base against you just to find your edge and, play to your potential. Ideally, it's through the act of excelling that you find the motivation and the edge to continue to win at the highest level. So that's the psychological and emotional challenge facing the Buckeyes. Now, I respect the Longhorns' talent and everything they do well, but they can't protect their quarterback. They've been one of the worst offenses in the FBS at committing turnovers. They can't run the ball against quality defenses, and they rank in the bottom half of the FBS in penalty yardage. I also think Ohio State has the 2 best players in this game, Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. And they're not just the 2 best players in this game. They are generational fucking talents. Finally, and PVH, you alluded to this earlier, I think the Buckeyes have the edge at the most important position on the field with Will Howard, provided he continues to take care of the football. Quinn Ewers is the better NFL prospect, and if he were healthy, I might give him the edge over Howard, but Howard's the better, healthier quarterback right now. I like Ohio State 31, Texas 17.
There you go.
All right, fellas.
I like it. I like it at all.
Before I let you go,
so fucking nervous.
Yeah. I'm less nervous now than I was going into the last 2 playoff games. I mean, that'll amp up as we get closer to kickoff. But
right.
Well, see, that's what worries me, though. Right? If we're feeling that, are they feeling that? And that's the complacency, right?
Right.
And, like as you said, right? Okay, maybe you don't have to lose to Michigan to amp it up. It is hard to get, kids motivated, for 17 games. And talent doesn't always just, win out. It does, but, shit then does happen, like against Michigan, who actually turns out might be better than we thought when we went into that game. So they gotta, and I'm, if we know it, they know it, Day knows it, the whole goddamn world knows it, keep the intensity up and they'll win this game. But it does kind of it adds a level of anxiety to me that people aren't feeling the anxiety that we felt in the first two games.
Yeah, this is the next evolution of this program, is finding a way to maintain an edge and reach your ceiling, find your A game against competition like this without being doubted. Because they can try and play that nobody believes in us card, but it'd be completely manufactured at this point because fucking everyone believes. I mean, they have the clear Vegas odds, right, to win, right? They have the best odds by a mile. And every national analyst that I've listened to so far is picking Ohio State to win the whole damn thing, right?
Yeah.
All right, fellas, before I let you go, I want to spend a few minutes looking at the other semifinal game between 7-seed Notre Dame and 6-seed Penn State in the Capital One Orange Bowl on Thursday night. I kind of like that they split these two games up. There's one on Thursday night, one on Friday night. Clearly, they don't want to compete with the NFL playoffs, which is why these games aren't happening on the weekends. This game is a 7:30 p.m. Eastern kick on ESPN. The line is Notre Dame -2. The over-under is 46.5. CP, why don't you get us started? Who do you like in this game?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. I got to be honest with you. The way Notre Dame defense is playing, I've got to be leaning towards the you know how much it pains me to say this, but the Irish, I got to say, I got to give them the advantage in this one. I think it's going to be a really tight ball game. As far as the score goes, I really wouldn't even know. But I think it's going to come down to within a field goal.
Okay.
But I think Notre Dame pulls it out.
All right. PVH, let me go. I'll go, and then we'll kick it to you.
Yeah.
For me, this one is almost too close to call. I mean, I think Notre Dame had the tougher path to get to this game, clearly. Even with Georgia down their starting quarterback, I think they clearly had the tougher path. When completely healthy, I think Notre Dame probably has the better defense, but they just lost their best defensive lineman, Riley Mills, for the season in that win over Indiana. Penn State also has an injury to their best defensive player, though, Abdul Carter. Carter was injured against Boise State. His status for this game is in doubt. Both of these teams have top 20 rushing offenses, but Penn State is better at defending the run. They're 8th nationally in rush defense. Notre Dame is 34th. So it stands to reason, I think, that Penn State should have more success running the ball in this game. This one probably comes down to quarterback play. I think Drew Aller has more arm talent than Riley Leonard, but Leonard's the better playmaker. I didn't realize this. He has over 800 yards rushing and 15 rushing touchdowns. And if you think about it, Aller's track record against really good defenses is highly suspect. Against top 10 opponents, I read this today, Aller's only completing 48% of his passes. And neither of these offenses has any real difference makers on the outside at receiver, but Penn State does have Tyler Warren. So I think Penn State has just a little bit more on offense than Notre Dame. And if James Franklin weren't their head coach, that would probably be enough for me to feel confident in picking Penn State. But if you look at the final CFP rankings, guys, Notre Dame is number 5. And James Franklin is 1-14 against top 5 opponents at Penn State. And we've seen some highly suspect play calling from Andy Kotelnicki in this game. We saw it in the game against Ohio State. Right, in that final possession where Ohio State got the goal line stop, Kotelnicki just, for some reason, did not go to Tyler Warren at all in that situation. I think I trust Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff more than I do James Franklin, and I trust Riley Leonard as a playmaker more than I do Drew Aller. So I'm taking Notre Dame by a field goal. PVH, how do you see this game?
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. It's hard to say, right? Because, Penn State's path to this game is just such a freaking joke, right?
It was a joke.
It's not like you can go back and say, oh, they're doing this well, or, they figured this out, or, that's happening. And they're here by circumstance, which, I guess the way to just walk into the semifinals is lose to Ohio State at home, and you're going to end up being in the semifinals without having to play anybody, whereas Notre Dame has had to play anybody. They're not that dynamic on offense.
Yeah. I
watched that whole game. But they, the special teams, right? They ran that kickback.
Uh-huh.
They're obviously well coached, and I think they just find a way to get it done.
That's my instinct as well. Yep, they just find a way.
Yeah, they'll find a way, right? It'll be close. I mean, that line is 45. Like, that screams under to me.
Yeah.
I don't see much offensive explosion, so maybe that's the way if you want to get it. But yeah, I think I think Notre Dame squeaks it out and gets it done.
Yeah, this feels like 17-14 or something like that.
Like that.
Yeah. All right, fellas, listen, that was a fine effort for Sunday afternoon. Why don't we end things there? Now, for our listeners, check your feeds for a recap of Ohio State, Texas, either next Saturday or Sunday. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and go Bucks. You've been listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. Follow us on X at South_Stands.